So Summoner Wars has just had its 30th deck released, which brings us almost halfway to the end of the release schedule, if we ever make it. And I thought I'd take this time to help explain to newer players how the build symbols work. So we got the master set in 2021. We got the starter set after that. We got 4 decks after that. And then we got a ton of decks after that. And so I've sort of analyzed all of these decks in a spreadsheet to help you understand what these build symbols mean, because they don't really have an impact on a game-to-game basis. They are sort of just these little side symbols that you may have noticed, you may have not have noticed, but they do have a big impact in the deck building aspect, and also just as an explainer. So every wave of decks has 6 decks, and every deck has 2 build symbols, a combination of 2 build symbols, and then these build symbols. So every build symbol is represented in a wave because there's 12 build symbols. And each build symbol is effectively like, if you've ever played Magic, it's like a color of the mana wheel, but in Summoner Wars, and there are 12 as opposed to 5. And so they're really, really handy because they basically flag to a player, this is the kind of play style that this deck is going to have. And they're also really handy because if you really enjoy a deck, I've heard from a lot of new people that it can be a very overwhelming game because there are a lot of decks. But if you enjoy, for example, you really like Earth decks, then you can try another Earth deck. For example, it's just like the logical next step. It's like when you've discovered a new genre of music. It's like you just look for the next artist within that genre. So I'm just going to run through every build symbol. The timestamp will be below, but this is just a primer of each build symbol, what they represent in terms of gameplay philosophy, as well as thematically, and what may be of interest to you. So starting off with fire. Fire is all about auto damage. So people who enjoy fire decks, it's a dice game, but you don't like rolling dice. And also dice allow you to plan more. They give you more determinism. Sorry, not dice. Auto damage allows you to plan more. It gives you more of an ability to think about your turn. And that's what fire decks grant you. They also have a lot of ways of because you're dealing damage outside of attacks, you often have a very high capacity for destruction. You can kill 4, 5, 6 things in a given turn when normally you only get 3 attacks. You also do a lot of self damage, but then there are ways of mitigating this as well. You also have units summoning units. So just like in real life, fire spreads extra strength. You also have units teleporting to other units. So also like real life, the wind will carry fire over a long distance. So will your units in Summoner Wars. And also units spawning on units is really useful because sometimes your opponent will break all your gates, but you still have options in those cases of, the fire will still spread and burn. And there's also a cute little connection I found with summoners abilities, linking summoners with units, regular units. Oh, and just as a point, the brackets next to the symbol, to the abilities, is how many unique instances of that ability I found in the data set. So for example, heavy mobile, there are 4 unique units that have that ability, whereas Curse, there is only 1 instance of that ability. So other findings, summoners have some of the lowest strength of all the build symbols. The champions are expensive. Most of the events are built in played during the build phase, which is actually quite a strong overlap with the logic decks. a lot of upgrade cards, and also, you know, as you might imagine, lots of demons and dragons. A great representation of the symbol is the Ember Beast. So he comes out next to one of your friendly units, and then he does auto damage. So great example. Next up we have logic. So logic is it's the symbol of structures. If you like building things, if you like repairing them, you like manipulating your buildings, the sort of logic puzzle, you might like structure decks. And the rule in the rule book is that structures can't move. So a lot of abilities in structure decks are just about finding interesting and unique ways to actually move your structures into position. So that's a little puzzle. They do a lot of passive damage, similar to fire. There's a lot of overlaps between the two. There's a lot of structure recycling, so bringing structures back from your discard pile, sort of like scrap heap kind of junkyard vibes. There's a lot of ways of getting structures out more easily and searching for structures in your deck. A lot of walls, so leverage, the ability to leverage allows you to attack through your walls. Parapets allow you to attack through your walls. A lot of hiding behind your walls, and that can be aggressive or defensive. And then repairing your structures. So it's all about structures. So there's a lot of ranged commons with the logic decks. There's a high percentage of structures, high percentage of upgrade cards, a lot of gates. Most of the events, 80% of them are played during the build phase. There's a lot of dwarves on the art, as you might expect, and there's a lot of constructs, so sort of mechanical, fun sentries and robots and things like that. The card I chose to represent the symbol is the Inventor. So he gives you great structure access, so you can build structures diagonal to him, so you can sort of run out, start slamming things down like crazy, and you can very quickly build sort of a defensive parameter, but like offensively. And then he also has that passive damage element, so every time he slams something down, it deals auto damage to things next to it. So yeah, similar to fire. Next up, we've got Divine. So Divine is all about protection. If you don't like your things dying, play Divine. And they've sort of got this regal, hoity-toity kind of like royalty kind of. So if you like to feel superior to other people, you might like Divine as well thematically. So a big thing about Divine is unit protection, preventing them from dying. There is a lot of meat shielding, so abilities that teleport your units next to your summoner to protect them. Oh, protect me! There's a lot of unit healing. The light, you might assume, like I did, that the light build symbol is the healing one, but it's actually not. Divine is. There's a surprising amount of card recursion, and when I say recursion, I just mean cards from your discard pile coming back to your hand, which is really, or the battlefield, which is a good economic boost. There's a bit of extra strength abilities, and 4 instances of engage. So we can clearly see that engage is a Divine ability. So there's a lot of range commons with Divine. A lot of events are played during the magic phase, and that makes sense because it's sort of like a lot of the events are like protection. So you're sort of at the end of your turn, you're like protecting yourself from the incoming attacks. There's a lot of vampires in the art, and there's a lot of elves. So elves and vampires. The card that I chose to represent Divine is the Arbiter of Peace. So yeah, looks very cool, very regal. I actually really like the aesthetic of this particular faction, but she's got tough, so harder to kill her, and then she also gives tough out to your allies and also your enemies, so keeping things alive, very on flavor with Divine. Next up, we've got Air. Now, Air appeals to the player who, you like the game, you like Summon Wars, but you just really hate thinking about movement and the sort of block puzzle that comes with movement. And Air just says, screw all that, we're just going to fly over and just deal, maths is for defenders kind of thing. Like, we're just going to run in and, do some... Air is really good at like assassination type gameplay. So yeah, they've got great movement, 7 instances of flight, mobile, burn hot, levitate, thrust, blazing speed, just like go, go, go. Quite a bit of ping damage as well, auto damage. And so that comes into the theme of kind of like tempests, tornadoes, lightning storms, that kind of thing. A lot of forcing and holding, so wind powers, pushing things away, pulling them, whether it's your own units or your enemy units. Sometimes it's just your own units to make them move faster. There's a theme. There's a theme of attacking with your allies. So expert rider, brimstorm bond, mount, carry, sort of strike team forces. You sort of assemble your forces and then you charge in as a one big collective unit, dragon riders, birds, this sort of just charging in. And you have the element of attacking from afar, so the sort of ambush element. These decks are very forgiving. If you mess up your movement, you can just fly away. And so if we have a sort of a double tap on the stats, a lot of ranged champions. Your summoners have some pretty low health, so while you're doing these strike forces, they're sort of glass cannon type. If you bring in summoner in, that is. We've got a lot of dragons, we've got a lot of goblins on the art. And the card that I use to represent this symbol is this fine chap. He flies and he also gives all of your units flight. So you come on, let's go, let's get in there, let's start destroying some stuff. All fly away and kind of hide. They're really good at flying, retreating as well. Next up we have Resolve. This is my least favorite build symbol to go up against. The main reason being Resolve is really good at making you punch yourself in the face instead of punching you in the face. So a lot of Resolve, it's the control symbol, and it's about deterrence, it's about debuffs. It's like, you can do that thing if you want, but we're going to punish you for it. So there's a huge emphasis on enemy debuffs. So greater engage, that first one. How that works is whenever an adjacent enemy moves away, you deal 2 damage to them. So that either disincentivizes your opponent to move next to you in the first place, or once they're there, they're kind of stuck there. You also have a lot of friendly buffs between your units, so area of effect buffs between your things. There's an element of mind control, so again, that theme of control, so you're switching your enemy units around now. Haha, it's on my side, screw you. Or you steal you steal your enemy's events, which is a really fun mechanic. Also forcing units, so you have all these debuffs, your opponent doesn't want to sort of go into the range of your debuff, well, now you can force them into that range. You have global buffs affecting everything. Ability manipulation is a big part, so stealing your opponent's abilities, giving your opponent's abilities, turning off your opponent's abilities. Global debuffs. Tutoring. If you don't know what tutoring means, it's basically a term from Magic. There was a card called Demonic Tutor, which allowed you to search your deck for a particular card. That's basically what tutoring means, just looking through your deck for a particular card. And so Resolve, a lot of these event cards in the Resolve symbol are played during your summon phase, setting your turn up. There's a lot of illusions on the art. And the card that I use to represent the whole build symbol is the Mind Knight. So she shoves, and then also whenever an enemy moves next to her, she forces your opponent to discard a card, which is really, really good. Really annoying for them. And oftentimes you'll find with this card and similar cards is that your opponent simply won't move next to her, which is an advantage in itself, because that basically affords you board positioning. You can move her in the middle of the board, and you can have quite a high guarantee that your opponent won't move next to her. So you can you're using these deterrents to grant yourself board positioning is a big element of resolve. Dark is next. Now, are you an edgelord? If you're an edgelord, if your favorite mechanic in the first edition of Summoner Wars was attacking your own units, you're going to like Dark. So Dark, a big element of Dark is unit recursion. So, zombies, skeletons, that kind of thing, bringing things back to life from the dead. Really good economic advantage there. You also have bonuses for destroying units, especially your own units. So there's a lot of abilities that sort of are leveraged by death and destruction, killing your own things for gain. Notice as well that when you kill your own units, you're denying your opponent magic. So it's sort of a twisted, you're getting an economic benefit from self-destruction. It's quite dark. We've got self-damage bonuses, so a lot of abilities that give you a reward if you hit yourself. Straight up negative abilities. Something about negative abilities that is interesting is they increase your stats. So there is a lot of examples of dark cards that have horrible abilities, but their stats are really, really good. And it's about managing those negative abilities. A bit of auto damage. Extra strength. And so, yeah, as I was saying earlier, a lot of commons in this build symbol have really, really good stats. So Dark has the highest health average of all the build symbols. For commons, 3.7 compared to 3.2. Champions have also high health. A lot of the dark events are played during the attack phase, the summon phase. So those dark rituals, those summoning events to bring out sort of big scary things at your own, you might have to sacrifice some things to do that. A lot of monsters on the art, a lot of vampires, a lot of undead. If you want to play a dark deck. So an example of a unit from the dark that I think is a great example is the Shadow Knight. So he costs 1 and he has 7 stats, which is that's a really good stat line. Like you'd normally expect to pay 2 for that kind of a stat line. But then he has these 2 really bad drawbacks. So when he dies, he deals a damage to your summoner, and when he comes out, he deals a damage to your friends. But some people like to be hit in darks. That's oftentimes a very good thing. Hitting yourself is good, as we explained earlier, with a lot of other abilities. So it's sort of unlocking these synergies through self-destruction. And next up, we've got water. So water is quite simple. It's kind of just big brawny guys, meatheads, lots of strength, lots of attacks. So we've got a lot of unit protection abilities, health protection, so regenerating, sort of that restorative nature of water. Forcing units, so being a big bruiser, forcing things around, being a big bully. Extra strength, we're going to gear up, we're going to do some damage. A bit of boost generation. A bit of passive damage as well. Some extra attacks. And a little theme that is kind of increasing with water that I think I really want them to do more of is champions matter. So things giving you benefits when you have your champions on the field. I would say that water has a bit of an identity crisis, but we'll see in the stats section that they don't really care about the abilities as much as the stats. So the commons have the highest cost of all commons, of all the build symbols. but that's usually because they have high health, high attack strength. A lot of the summoners are melee, and they like to get into the action and be like sort of superhero summoners. A lot of the events are played during the attack phase, so again, being the big bullies. And in terms of the art, there's a lot of orcs, as you'd expect, big beefy guys, and merfolk. And the card that represents water for me is Tidebreaker. So he comes out, you force him one space, so that theme of forcing. He's ready to go, he's charging in, and then he gets +1 strength if you control one or more champions. So again, that champions matter, but also that plus strength. If he had high health, then he'd be the perfect representation of water. Next, we have Instinct, which is also very similar to water. So we have high strength and attacks. You would like Instinct if you like to do big attacks with potential consequences, but it's okay because you still get your thing, you still get your big attack. You're going to deal a lot of damage, but you might deal some damage to yourself, but that's like, you can't make an omelette without breaking some eggs. It's kind of the philosophy of Instinct. We have a lot of abilities that boost your summoner, so and summoners are also generally pretty active in the fight. A lot of negative abilities. A lot of, similar to water, a lot of abilities that force units. A theme of Instinct that is strong is the zero cost units matter. So we have a lot of abilities that care about you having zero cost units. Extra movement. Reckless attacks. So, Volcanic Blast, for example, it deals a huge amount of damage to things in the entire radius. It doesn't matter who's there, and obviously you can do things to mitigate it, move your units away, but it's sort of big attacks. Who cares about the consequences as long as I'm doing more damage to my opponent? And to me, the funnest aspect of water, and they've only done it in 2 instances, but it's the re-rolls. So re-rolling dice, it's a dice game. I love re-rolling dice. So a huge amount of representation with melee in water. Water also cares a lot about the sort of, it's a lightning bolt symbol. I call it the Harry Potter symbol, but it's on 2 faces of the die, or I think it's 1 or 2, I don't remember. But basically, out of the 26 instances of abilities that care about that symbol, basically 30% of them are Instinct. And that ties in really well with the reroll ability, which I'll show you in a bit. Right now. So the Tundra Fighter, she every time she attacks an enemy, roll a die. If you roll that little Harry Potter symbol, you can force her 1 space and do another attack. And so it's that extra strength, it's the forcing, it's the attacks, it's the melee attacks, but also you may notice that it doesn't say it's limited. So if you can re-roll it, I've had games where she's attacked like 5 times in a row. So it also Instinct appeals to that sort of gambler in you that just wants to keep rolling and roll big, and there's a big upside, but there's also a big downside. So next up we have Spirit. Spirit is like kumbaya, kind of hippie vibes. Sort of the philosophy of Spirit is like stronger together. And so you'll rarely see a Spirit deck that has like 1 unit that is going to carry the show. And so a lot of Spirit's value comes in AoE bonuses between your units. So abilities that benefit other units, but then all of your units are benefiting each other. So then you end up with this very cohesive and strong army that is quite scary to go up against. Because it's an AoE bonus, it sort of Spirit, if you really like to have a very well formatted an army in formation that is sort of together, like kind of like a Roman legion, then you might like a Spirit deck. So there's a lot of adjacency bonuses, again encouraging you to sort of keep your army together. There's also global bonuses, boost generation, and actually only 2 abilities I found cost magic, but both of them were spirit. I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, but interesting little find. So a lot of the art of these spirit decks have anthropomorphs, so sort of humanoid birds, humanoid goats, humanoid lizards. If you're into that kind of thing, you might like spirit decks. And the unit that I use as an example is Sunderved, so he gives everyone around him within 2 spaces +1 strength. But you'll notice his ability doesn't actually benefit him, it benefits his friends. But then in turn, they are much better at defending him because they're stronger. So it's sort of that symbiotic relationship. Next, we've got growth. So growth is kind of like, I would describe it as you're playing chess and your opponent is playing checkers. I don't really recommend growth decks after a long workday because you kind of need a couple of espressos and a Ritalin to really kind of, it's it's kind of like if you're into Euro games, if you're into managing your economy, if you like spreadsheet type games, that's kind of what Earth deck, maybe I'm making them sound a bit more complicated than they actually are, but Earth decks are all about building an economy through boost. So building a bunch of boost and then using a bunch of boost for value, and they all do this in various different ways. And so a large amount of the abilities are about generating boost, and then there's the payoff. And so you spend these games and you're just trying to keep your little engine alive while your opponent is trying to break down your doors. So it's kind of like you're playing a Euro game and your opponent is playing like Risk and you're just trying to hold off until you can sort of get your payoff from your engine and then charge, you know. And so there's also sort of boost transferal between your units. So you get the boost generation, you got the boost payoff, and then there's the transferal, which is the manipulation to make that easier. And there's a few tutoring effects. So there's a, you know, summoners are generally very beefy in nature decks. They also have a lot of melee attacks. A lot of melee is represented in the Earth symbol. And if you just like animals and tree folk, then on the art, then you might enjoy Earth as well. So the card that I used to represent Earth was the Lioness, because within herself, she's kind of a closed economy, which is like a micro version of sort of the bigger economies that you find in these decks. So every time she attacks something, she gets a boost, and then she gets +1 life for every boost she has. So we see that generation, but then also that payoff. Next up, we've got Cunning. So Cunning is very like cloak and dagger, like surprising your opponent, very ambushy. A lot of these decks are very good at sort of surprising your opponent through surprise movement tricks and dealing a lot of surprise damage. Another thing about Cunning is there's a lot of very, very cheap units that also have very low stats. And so a big strategy of Cunning is sort of go wide, deal a lot of damage through quantity, not quality. So as you can see, we've got a lot of movement tricks, moving through units, moving over structures, moving diagonally, moving more quickly, that kind of thing. We have that go wide theme of having lots and lots of units on the battlefield being really good. We have unit swapping, so units teleporting places with other friendly units, which begs the question, where is the ninja deck? I need to see a ninja deck. Negative abilities, so you have a lot of very cheap units that sometimes they have a lot of negative abilities as well. We have attack tricks, so sort of catching your opponent off guard, smoke bombs, backstabs, steady shots, attacking through units. And then another theme is like infiltration rewards. So if you get your units to your opponent's side of the battlefield, some kind of payoff, kind of capture the flag elements. And so yeah, there's a lot of cheap units in Cunning decks. The average cost of Cunning units is 0.4 compared to the 1.2 average, so about 3 times cheaper. But then we see that payoff with the health and the strength being a lot lower. Champions are also much cheaper, and a lot of the Cunning events are played on the move phase. So yeah, getting surprised through the movement. We also see a lot of illusions and a lot of goblins, as you might expect, with sort of Cunning kind of abilities. The card that I used as an example is Sin Sin. So she's a champion, but she's free, which is, that's so good. But she has 6 health and 2 attack, which is, that's a massive stat line for 0. But then of course she has her downside, which is if she's killed, your opponent gets 3 magic. So that's where the balancing comes in. And then you have Infiltrate, so this is sort of that capture the flag element, that if she gets to your opponent's side of the battlefield, she deals the damage to your opponent's summoner. And there are also a lot of abilities that allow you to swap places with 0 cost units. So she could swap place with like a Sneaks, for example. And so there's a lot of, she doesn't have a movement ability, but there are lots of movement abilities in this build symbol. Lastly, we have Light. So Summoner Wars is a card game after all, and Light is all about card advantage. So a big element of Summoner Wars is you only get 5 cards per hand, and sort of managing that flow of cards is really important, because if you're hanging on to cards, then you don't draw any cards, and then you may not see those combo pieces that you need in time to actually do it. So Light is really good at helping you keep that flow of cards going. So a big element of Light is card advantage, through card draw mainly. Another element of Light is enters the battlefield effects. So some powerful one-off effects when it comes into the battlefield. Extra strength, deck manipulation. So you may not want a unit now, but you want it later. You can put it at the bottom of your deck. Maybe you draw it again, or maybe you just wait to the end of the game. So there's a lot of manipulating the deck. We also have bouncing units. So bouncing is not killing units, but it's just sending them to your opponent's hand. There's a lot of synergy between enters the battlefield effects and bouncing units. So there's a great little combo in a lot of Light decks where you summon a unit, it enters the play effect, and then you bounce it back to your hand, and you just rinse repeat. Summoning access. So Light also allows you to summon things on phases that aren't the summoning phase, which can also catch your opponent by surprise. Bit of auto damage, and also there's some payoffs for high resources. So for example, Mastermind gives that unit +1 strength for every 2 cards you have in your hand. So sort of this theme of abundance and plenty, and then sort of rewarding you for lots of cards, lots of magic, that kind of thing. So we've got a lot of ranged commons, pretty low average health on the champions, and then most of the Light events are played during the summon phase. So again, that emphasis on the summoning phase and improving it, or setting up your turn. And we also see a lot of merfolks represented with Light. So Citadel Advisor is the card that I used to represent. Every time he moves, you can draw a card. Huge. I love Citadel Advisor. You might tell, but I love Light decks. And then Warn. So after this unit attacks an enemy unit, you can choose a card from your hand and place it on the bottom of your draw pile to force your summoner 1 space. So again, that deck manipulation